Alongside Jesse Simonton, I'm Austin Price here on this National Signing Day, the second signing period. Tennessee picks up Dee Beckwith and then, of course, Malachi Wideman. Two talented athletes, Jesse, and Jeremy Pruitt, was pretty emphatic. They're excited about these two guys.
And why wouldn't you be? I mean, Tennessee closed strong today. You and I had a pretty strong inclination. That's the way it was going to play out this day. But you never know. I mean, that's kind of how signing day is. Yeah, that's recruiting. But the fact that Tennessee needed two more playmakers in this class, they go 2 for 2 today. Both guys, you heard Jeremy say it. Will Hester told us, about Dee Beckwith, called him the freakiest athlete he's had in 20 years. Then you pull up the highlights of what Malachi Wideman has done on the basketball court and on the gridiron. He's a guy who scored 13 touchdowns as a senior. 40-some-odd points a game, on the hardwood, freakish dunks. Tennessee got two really high upside, high explosive athletes. Now it's just going to be about development. Both of those guys need a little bit of tweaking in terms of route running and kind of just technique stuff. But when you add them to the Jalen Hyatts and the Jimmy Callaways, we'll see what they get out of Velus Jones. Tennessee really did reload at a position that they had to and signed, as Jeremy said, up here, arguably one of the top receiving classes in the country this cycle.
Yeah, so many questions going into this 2020 season surrounding the receivers because no Marquez, no Jawan. Brandon Johnson obviously redshirted, and, of course, Josh Palmer's never really been the guy, although he had flashes definitely there at some point during the season. Now, all of a sudden, there'll still be questions, but depth shouldn't be one of them. All of a sudden, they have now a lot of bodies that you could think they could potentially throw out there.
Yeah, I would say explosiveness isn't going to be one of them. Production, I think, is still going to be a huge question mark. I plan on really digging into this, actually, now that we officially know who Tennessee's receiving core is going to be. There's a correlation out there the last few years that losing that receiving production is honestly how offenses take a step back. And so can Tennessee kind of buck that trend next year? Because obviously Jawan and Marquez were their two most productive receivers. But, I really like what Callaway and Hyatt can do. It's easy to forget about those guys because they signed in December. But those are guys that I think Tennessee believes they can move around, play in the slot and outside. And Wideman now, Tennessee really has had issues in the red zone. He looks like a red zone freak to me with his, catch radius, the fact that he's already 6'5", bouncy, leaping ability. Again, we'll see how it translates, but you at least like the potential of this group going into 2020.
Jeremy Pruitt also sang the praises of both Chris Winkie and the Wideman recruitment, and then Will Friend, and really said that both guys used the other guys around them, to help kind of tag team this both recruitments.
Yeah, your question about Will, it was funny. That might have been the nicest he's been about like one particular recruiting coach.
It should be. That's his college roommate.
Yeah, but normally, he's very kind of tepid in that praise where he does, or faint, I guess you would say, because every time he goes back to, it kind of takes a village sort of thing, and it does. It's just like, even Brian Niedermeyer a year ago when he won Recruiter of the Year or whatever, kind of dished out some of that. It wasn't just me, Landon Kavaris Crouch and Henry To'oTo'o. So, again, Chris Winkie does deserve some credit, though, because, as Jeremy said, for Malachi was going to Florida State. If Willie Taggart's at Florida State, Tennessee does not have Malachi Wideman. But the fact that, there was a coaching change there, Chris Winkie had kind of, continued to kind of build on that relationship. That paid dividends come signing day when, this month, Tennessee really only focused on 3 guys. The Jay Hardy news, disappeared fairly early, and so it really was just Dee Beckwith, Malachi Wideman, and the ever-continuing Zach Evans saga.
Well, the theme of the 2020 recruiting class for Tennessee will be keeping it warm because David Johnson kept a lot of those Memphis kids warm. Chris Winkie kept things warm with a guy like Malachi Wideman and continued to recruit him even when he looked like he was headed elsewhere. Jay Graham has kind of kept Zach Evans warm when he was at Texas A&M. That relationship continues to build. This Tennessee become a legitimate factor when Evans goes back on the road for that final official visit come March and then eventually shows up somewhere.
Yeah, we'll see. That seems like it's a storyline that's not going to die until Zach Evans shows up on campus, whether it's here, Ole Miss, Oregon, or a junior college. Frankly, that one's going to be one that I think folks are going to be talking about down the line about just kind of how wild and all the twists and turns happening there.
Yep, it's like a NASCAR road track. Whoosh, 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 whoosh. Sound effects free here at VolQuest.com. For Jesse Simonton, I'm Austin Price.